So let me start by asking you, what does leadership mean to you? And then do you believe, what do you think is the essence of good leadership?
Okay. So hello, everybody. I'm glad to be with you. Technology is fantastic when it's working, but every now and then it doesn't. So we all just have to grin and bear it. Leadership. Leadership is one of those funny words that it's often hard to describe, but everybody knows when you see it. When you see good leadership, everybody knows it and recognizes it. So for me, a leader is a person who motivates people to achieve specific goals, that has a clear vision, and can communicate that in a way that others can understand it and embrace it. A leader uses influence. They don't need to use their authority or position or hierarchy in any kind of implied power. They lead through influence. They understand how to manage change, and they ask questions to seek understanding of others, and they recognize skills in others and recognize when those skills should be nurtured and further developed. So I think about the essence of good leadership. I guess the only thing I can think of is trust. And trust is a two-way street. People have to trust their leaders, but leaders have to trust their people as well. And trust is earned, right? And once it's lost, it is really hard to regain that trust. But the relationship does not work without trust.
I agree, and certainly a culture of trust is extremely important in any organization. So let me ask you, what roles did mistakes play in your learning process? And can you please talk about a mistake that you made as a leader and what you learned from that mistake?
Well, I hate making mistakes. We all make them, and we hope that we never repeat the mistake we made. But mistakes are a fantastic way to not only learn something, but to seal that learning in your brain. Because you won't forget the mistake you made. And since the topic is leadership, years ago I was working in the McDonald's account. McDonald's is Coke's largest customer, and I was had two roles there. I was the controller, the finance person, as well as the executive assistant to the senior vice president on the job. So there's an administrative assistant who does the secretarial stuff, and then there's an executive assistant who does the management work for the senior leader. So I was also the executive assistant. We were going through a restructuring, and I was at my job. I was asked or told to manage the restructuring process for the group. Anyway, so try to make a long story short, we were talking to the leadership about this restructuring, and we had frequent meetings with the leaders. And one day I was at the gym. Coke has a gym, and one of the administrative assistants came over to me and started asking me questions about the restructuring. And so I answered her questions, and she thought that she was fine at the time. We parted. She went back into the office and was very upset by the time she got back to the office. Now, the interesting thing was her role wasn't changing. She was fine. The person she supported wasn't changing. It was the idea of change that bothered her, I think. So she, made an issue of our conversation, and our HR support came to me and said, listen, anytime you talk to an administrative person, that's very different from talking to one of our professionals. And so you really need to be careful when you talk to an administrative person. So, it was HR telling me that. It was early 90s. I'd been at the company at that point in time for maybe 6 years. And so, okay, I took what they said. And then realized slowly that the real issue here was that nobody was talking to the administrative staff. I was talking to the professional staff and their leaders, and they were talking to their teams, but nobody was talking to the administrative staff. And frankly, anybody, professional or admin, would have had a problem if there had been significant changes going on and nobody was telling them, nobody was updating them. So I learned, and then so I started updating the administrative staff. and having separate meetings with them. And so I realized it has nothing to do with them being an administrative person versus a professional person. It was really all about change management. It was really about how you bring people along, and how you help them understand the need for the change, why, and then how it impacts them. I feel bad that I acted, for a while based upon this person's telling me that I had to be careful around the administrative staff. But at least I learned before too long that I needed to do something different.
That's a great story and a great learning and takeaway. I think this whole issue of change management, as I'm sure, as a very experienced executive, Kathy, is one of the hardest things that an organization goes through, managing change, particularly change that has a broad scope. Yeah, the uncertainty that change brings for everybody, and as a result of that, the anxiety that comes about, it's really difficult to manage, and as you mentioned, needs to be explicitly managed.